Hey guys! Tonight we're wrapping ourselves in every blanket we can find and wandering into a medieval winter. So dim the lights, settle into your favorite chair, maybe convince the cat that your lap already belongs to someone else, and let the room grow quiet. Tonight there's no urgent mission, no great battle to win, and certainly no magical fireplace waiting around the corner. Just a very long, very cold season that most of us would absolutely fail to survive. As always, if you're enjoying these slow walks through history, consider giving the video a like and subscribing. But only if you genuinely enjoyed drifting off to stories about people whose biggest winter luxury was sometimes owning 2 socks instead of 1. Now, take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and let's quietly step back into Europe, somewhere around the 13th century. The first thing you would notice isn't the cold, it's the darkness. Modern winters are almost cozy by comparison. Streetlights glow outside, radiators quietly hum. Your phone politely informs you that sunset will arrive at 4:47 p.m., as though that's merely a scheduling inconvenience. Medieval people had none of that. When daylight faded, the world simply disappeared. A winter evening arrived surprisingly early. By late afternoon, the sky was already turning gray. Clouds gathered with all the enthusiasm of unpaid tax collectors. Before long, villages were swallowed by darkness. Candles existed. They were expensive. Good candles were made from beeswax, which smelled pleasant and burned cleanly. Unfortunately, bees were not exactly handing out unlimited supplies. Most ordinary people relied on tallow candles made from animal fat. They smoked, they smelled, they dripped everywhere. Imagine trying to relax while your entire house carries the faint aroma of old stew mixed with sheep. Of course, that smell was competing with several others. The medieval house wasn't exactly winning any interior design awards. The floor might simply be packed dirt. Animals sometimes wandered inside, and smoke from the fireplace floated wherever it pleased because chimneys were surprisingly uncommon in earlier centuries. Much of the smoke simply lingered overhead, politely reminding everyone that breathing fresh air was mostly an outdoor hobby. Now, imagine waking up here, not at 8 in the morning, not after scrolling through social media. You wake because you're freezing. Your blanket is made from coarse wool. Your nose feels cold. Your breath forms tiny clouds in the room. Congratulations. You have survived one night. Several dozen more remain. Let's look at the house itself. Many medieval homes were built from timber frames filled with woven branches and mud. It worked well enough in summer. Winter was less forgiving. Tiny cracks formed everywhere. Wind slipped through walls with remarkable confidence. Your expensive modern insulated windows have been replaced by little openings covered with wooden shutters. Glass existed, certainly, but ordinary families usually couldn't afford large glass windows. So when the wind arrived, it simply introduced itself to everyone inside. The fireplace became the center of life. Cooking happened there. Eating happened nearby. Children gathered close. Grandparents gathered even closer. The family dog probably claimed the warmest spot of all, because dogs mastered comfort thousands of years before humans figured it out. Unfortunately, fireplaces weren't magical. Heat escaped. Smoke refused to cooperate. Someone constantly needed more firewood, and collecting that wood wasn't exactly a pleasant afternoon activity. During autumn, entire families spent weeks gathering fuel. Wood meant survival, not comfort, survival. If your fire died during a severe cold spell, restarting it might become surprisingly difficult. Matches didn't exist. Fire had to be carefully preserved. Sometimes glowing embers were buried beneath ashes overnight, quietly waiting until morning. Lose those embers. Well, your day had suddenly become much more complicated. Now let's discuss clothing, because this is where many modern visitors confidently assume they'd be perfectly fine. I'll just wear a coat, a charming idea. Except coats as we know them today hadn't really arrived. Instead, you layered wool, then more wool. See, then perhaps another layer of wool. Underneath, maybe linen if you owned enough clothing. Everything scratched, everything became damp, everything took forever to dry. Rain was particularly annoying. Snow looked prettier. Both eventually left you wet. Wet clothing during winter was one of history's least entertaining experiences. Modern waterproof fabrics performed tiny miracles every day. Medieval wool mostly performed optimism. Boots, often leather, useful until they became soaked. Then they slowly transformed into cold little buckets wrapped around your feet. Socks existed. Enough socks did not. Many people simply wore whatever they possessed until it nearly fell apart. Repairing clothing became a constant activity. Nothing was disposable. Every patch represented another season survived. Now imagine heading outside before sunrise. You aren't jogging for fitness. Nobody invented step counters yet. You're heading toward frozen fields. Animals still need feeding. Water still needs collecting. Life continues whether your fingers approve or not. Speaking of water, that's another surprise. It freezes, wells freeze, buckets freeze, streams freeze. Even carrying water becomes dangerous because icy paths have absolutely no sympathy for your dignity. Slip once, drop the bucket, walk back, try again. No one is handing out participation trophies. Winter food wasn't especially cheerful either. Fresh vegetables, mostly gone. Fresh fruit, a pleasant memory. Everything now depended upon what had been preserved months earlier. Salted meat, dried peas, turnips, barley, oats, cheese if supplies lasted. Cabbage appeared with astonishing frequency because cabbage simply refuses to surrender. It's almost unfair. Empires collapse, kings argue, castles crumble. Cabbage somehow remains available. Bread stayed important throughout winter, although its quality varied enormously. Poor families often baked coarse bread containing rye, barley, oats, and occasionally ingredients that would make modern bakers quietly leave the room. Sometimes flour accidentally included bits of husk, tiny stones. Other unexpected additions courtesy of medieval milling technology. Dentists, naturally, were not thrilled, assuming your village even had one. Spoiler. It probably didn't. Now let's talk about sleep. Modern people generally expect 8 comfortable hours. Medieval sleep worked differently. Night lasted longer during winter. People often slept in segments. They might fall asleep shortly after sunset, wake around midnight for an hour or two, pray, repair tools, chat quietly, then return to bed until dawn. This wasn't considered strange. It was simply life. Besides, staying under blankets was often warmer than wandering around, unless nature called. Then unfortunately you had to leave your warm little nest. Outdoor toilets during winter deserve exactly as much enthusiasm as you're imagining, perhaps less. Let's briefly visit one of history's favorite misconceptions. Surely castles were warm. Not really. Castles looked magnificent from outside. Inside, they were enormous stone refrigerators. Stone absorbs cold exceptionally well. Large halls were difficult to heat. Even wealthy nobles sometimes complained constantly about winter, which is oddly comforting. Money could purchase velvet robes. Money struggled against frozen walls. Servants hurried endlessly carrying firewood. Massive fireplaces burned all day. Drafts still wandered through corridors as though paying rent. Royal bedrooms often included heavy curtains surrounding the bed, not because they looked elegant, because trapping warm air around sleeping people made practical sense. Canopies were insulation wearing expensive fabric. Even kings preferred not becoming human icicles. Now, picture an ordinary peasant hearing that nobles enjoyed luxurious winters. He might politely raise an eyebrow, then continue chopping wood. Because everyone, rich or poor, spent winter negotiating with the cold. The difference was simply how many blankets participated in the negotiation. Winter illness spread easily. Smoke irritated lungs. Crowded houses encouraged disease. Nutrition became less varied. Doctors understood surprisingly little about infection. Many treatments involved balancing mysterious bodily humors. Others involved herbs. Some involved prayer. Quite a few involved confidence unsupported by evidence. Medical certainty has always been remarkably fashionable. Children suffered particularly hard, older people too. A harsh winter could quietly reshape an entire village by spring. No dramatic speeches, no orchestral soundtrack, just empty chairs where familiar faces once sat. That's one reason medieval communities relied so heavily on neighbors, sharing food, sharing firewood, helping repair roofs before snow arrived. No family truly survived alone. Community wasn't simply kindness, it was infrastructure. As evening settled once again over the village, smoke drifted upward into the cold air. The fire crackled softly. Someone stirred another pot of stew.